It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, connecting you to the latest real estate information from across Australia. We do that 7 days a week and take a closer, more in-depth look at property markets from Darwin to Perth and every city in between. Middle of our working week, we are up to a Wednesday, June the 25th. Oh, now, the Grenfell Tower tragedy in London, which is currently screening on Netflix. If you have not seen this doco, you must. It is absolutely eye-opening. And it still casts a long shadow over 70 people dying as a result of the highly flammable cladding that was used in this building. Shockingly, a similar fire broke out in Dubai that we talked about last week, and the early reports suggest that the same combustible exterior panels were involved in that fire. Have a look at the video and just how quickly that spreads on the outside of the building. But what is happening in Australia around this problem? Well, some key facts this morning. The aluminium composite panels with the polyethylene core, which is commonly referred to as PE, contributed to the rapid spread of the Grenfell Tower disaster. It has been used in many buildings in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and other Australian cities. After Grenfell, Australian authorities launched audits across states and territories. Now, these identified thousands of buildings. I was surprised that it's in the thousands, especially high-rises, apartments and commercial towers with non-compliant or combustible cladding. Victoria and New South Wales have been most affected. Victoria's cladding safety program has been managing a state-funded removal and rectification program. New South Wales established a project to remediate, a similar initiative to remove and replace flammable cladding from residential buildings. In 2021, Australia's building codes were updated to tighten rules around cladding use, but legacy issues remain and many buildings are still awaiting remediation. So let's catch up with Margaret Lomas from Destiny Solutions this morning, and welcome back, Margaret, onto the Real Estate Breakfast. This is an issue that has been going on for a number of years. I think of the first home buyers that are a younger generation, not fully updated with the facts here. We know that there is a lot of these first home buyers deciding to buy the units because it's a cheaper way into the real estate market, but not necessarily fully understanding what's at play here.
I'm really glad that you've raised this topic because it has been an ongoing issue for a long time now, so long that I recall up to 5 years ago interviewing Michael Tees, who's a lawyer and a person who's really up to date on all of this. He was telling me then about how bad the situation was in Australia and how it's possible that up to 80% of unit blocks that had been built in the last 25 or so years have some form of combustible cladding, if not over the entire building, certainly on parts of the building, and that many of these buildings and building managers and strata corporations aren't even aware that they have this combustible cladding. And so therefore they're not becoming part of any rectification program. And if it's not bad enough that we also have a situation where probably 80% of buildings or apartment blocks built in the last 25 years also have significant water ingress problems. And we've seen that play out in some of the bigger towers where we've had to have entire blocks of residents move out because their properties are so water affected that they become unstable. Now we have this as well, and it makes it a little bit scary to be a buyer of a unit.
Yeah, well, coming back to those first home buyers, not all of them are going to be fully up to date with what is going on, what is happening around this. And due diligence, we bang on about the due diligence, especially when it comes to strata. And this is a point in case. There will be people that have bought properties over the last 5 years totally oblivious to what's going on in this domain.
Yeah, and you'll know that when you buy any kind of a property anywhere in Australia, there's a little part of your contract that the seller has to declare if there's any asbestos in the building. And so people do their due diligence to be sure there's no asbestos, or if there has been, that it's been effectively removed. We really need contracts to also include a checkbox that there's no combustible cladding in the building before people go ahead and buy. And the one thing that I find a lot of first home buyers don't do when they're buying an apartment is they don't do a body corporate search. Doing a simple body corporate search, which isn't standard and you have to ask for it as an additional thing, a simple body corporate search will at least let you look back through the records to see whether it's even been talked about, to see whether the building has been cleared of having this combustible cladding. If it's never been spoken about and has never been raised at a past meeting, then you can't be sure that that building you're buying into doesn't have some kind of combustible cladding somewhere. It's probably worse for you in some ways than that asbestos that we're so careful not to live in and around, because everybody worries that a tiny fibre of asbestos is going to be inhaled when they're hanging a picture and they're going to die from asbestosis. I think this is a more serious problem than the asbestos one.
So if you haven't already watched that documentary on Netflix, it is called Grenfell Disaster, and take a look at it. It was absolutely scary to me to watch. Now, talking of a scary thing to watch, Trump's decision to launch strikes into Iran has become our next major geopolitical shock. We're always wondering where the next one is coming from. Iran yesterday struck with missiles in Qatar. Their target was the US airbase. Why this matters so much in real estate is the way people are feeling about any instability. Obviously, the economy comes into play here, and the sentiment when you are buying real estate is very much a real factor in somebody's decision.
If you speak to Trump right now, he'll tell you that it's all over. They'll just, they gave them a bloody nose and now they're all going to come to the table and peace will ensue. I'm not so confident that that's going to be the outcome, but let's just hope he's right. But the thing is, while geopolitical tensions like these can have ripple effects across many of our global markets, we see it often play out in the share market, which instantly reacts. We see it play out in energy markets because of, obviously oil and other commodities that are important in the world. The direct impact on Australian property tends to be a little bit limited in the short term. But having said that, we need to realise that we might see some indirect effects. Let me give you an example. I guess if the tensions continue, what we're probably going to see is a sustained rise in oil prices. And what that then does is it fuels global inflation, and that in turn might influence interest rate settings here in Australia. So we might then see all of this talk around, okay, we're going to see at least 4 or 5 interest rate cuts over the next year. Economists are happy to tell us that. And the economists' views are always based on the situation on the day they're giving the view. We might see a change to that with higher borrowing costs directly impacting buyer sentiment and affordability. And we could see this market that people are talking about recovering, which to me, it never really fell, but recovering and lots of interest back in the market. A lot of that's talk by real estate agents trying to talk it up, but we might see the opposite effect. We do have to understand on the other side that Australian property is really driven more by domestic factors like supply constraints, population growth, infrastructure spending, all of those things, even basic lending policy, which can change from time to time. While I expect that if the global tensions worsen and continue, we then might be looking at interest rate cuts halted for a while. We might look at an interest rate rise, but I don't think we're going to see any other major impacts back on the sentimentality in Australia. You know yourself that Australians tend to have that feeling that, well, we're so far away, it's never going to affect us. It's a good thing in some ways, and in other ways, not so good.
So many people are asking the question of, well, should I fix my mortgage rate or should I leave it on the floating at the moment? It's a sort of volatile world that we live in. You go back 10 years, much, much different now, Margaret, in 2025. The smart money, a lot of the time, has always been on, well, just, keep it on the floating. But we know what happened when COVID happened and then everybody became unglued. So is now a good time to fix your mortgage? I wonder what people are thinking.
As you know, I've been investing in property for going on for 30 years, and I've, bought my own home well before that as well. And in that entire time, and in the entire time that I've been commentating on the property market, there's only ever been one time when I thought it was better to fix, when the risks were really mitigated, and that was when fixed rates came down to under 2%. And it was the first time in my lifetime that I took the opportunity to also fix my interest rates. At the time, the fixed rate was well below the variable at the time. And all you had to do was work out how many interest rate cuts you needed to get as low as your fixed rate and then go beyond that to make up for the period of time that you remained on the higher rate, to work out how much interest you'd pay over a period of time. And that's what I always recommend that people do when they want to fix a rate. They need to look at what the best fixed rate is that they can get and what period of time that's going to be over, and estimate the total amount of interest that they'll pay under that fixed rate over that time. Then they need to go back and see what the total amount is that they're going to pay on the variable over that time, and how many interest rate cuts you would need and when to save enough to make it worthwhile. Don't forget, if a fixed rate is higher than a variable, which most often they are, for the first little bit of that fixed rate, you're going to pay more than you would have paid, and you're banking on the fact that maybe the rates will come down and therefore will go up, and therefore you have got a lower rate than the rates that have gone up. That rarely happens because we rarely see fixed rates that are lower than the variable. I think the other thing that people really need to do is to sit down and have a look at their personal situation and ask, at what point am I happy with an interest rate? And if it's a fixed rate that you can get and you're happy with that and you know that it builds in surety for you over the next year or two or however long that rate is fixed for, then take that rate because you've then got that surety, and know that it's like gambling. It could be that at the end of the day, you might have been better off on the variable or not.
Interesting times, Margaret. Some will say, of course, scary times, but that'll wrap us up on our Wednesday. Have a great day. Catch you back soon.
Thank you.
Ready to take your real estate knowledge to the next level? So are we.
All of a sudden, we're seeing a lot more land opening up and a lot more activities. They've done it in such a way that anything within 800 square metres of a town centre and transport has been uplifted in density, and so we're starting to see those development sites transact.
Obviously, renting in Clayfield, likes Clayfield, wants to buy in Clayfield, and then had the auntie. Go, you aunties. That's the second email we've had. 50K. Gee, that is so significant for somebody saving to get into a property.
Another trend as well, where young professionals buying properties, having them as an investment for the first couple of years. As you said with that statistic that 50% of the new developments have been 3 bedrooms, that's been largely pushed towards the affluent downsizer. So a lot more 1 bedrooms, 1 bedroom plus studies and 2 bedrooms. That will naturally appeal to those first home buyers.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.